I'm Dave Scott for Hoob, and a lot of you know Hoob. I have a Dave Scott line with Hoob, and we've had a number of great pieces with the line, predominantly over in Europe, and now we're infiltrating the U.S. as well and other international markets. But the Dave Scott Long Course Tri has been quite a sensation, and we've done a lot of work on the fabric and the fit and the function of the suit. So you can take a look at it. The question that I have from a lot of athletes is, how do I really hit that perfect taper? What is that ideal taper, and what are the things I need to think about when I'm designing my taper? And I'm going to give you a few do's and don'ts, and hopefully this will help kind of work with your coach or work by yourself in putting together a great taper. I think we need to look first off at around 20 to 22 days outside of your big race, because that's when your really taper, or at least the thought process of your taper, should begin. So let me go through some of the prerequisites, and I'll kind of whittle this down as we get closer actually to the race day. First off, you want to try to maintain the same schedule. In other words, if you're swimming, cycling, running, and those are on X number of days, don't delineate from that routine. It always should be the same. I swim Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I ride Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, whatever it is. Maintain the like schedule. Your body's used to it, your mind is used to it, and usually you have to work it around other things in your life. So that one seems like a pretty easy one, but a lot of people end up kind of skewing their schedule and turning it upside down. Bad idea. The second thing, when you're outside on these 22 days, is a lot of people think, gee, I need to do my last long day. And I've talked a little bit about the long ride and changing your intensity a little bit. And that's one of the first things, is don't lock into the pace that you want to do on your race, whether it's a half Ironman 70.3 or Ironman distance race or even Olympic distance race. Don't try to do your long day at that race speed. And we have a lot of athletes that are a little overzealous on that long day. So looking at 22 days, 21 days, 20 days outside, that should be your long run. And I just mentioned you want to maintain the same distance. You don't want to go over distance on that last long run. The longer ride, you can do a longer ride inside this window, but the last long ride should be somewhere between day 8, 9, 10, all right? So you can push that down a little bit closer to the race, or even on the outside, as I mentioned, with the run. It could be around 20 days. The swim, I think you can really push that up all the way to the last week. If you are doing a long swim and it's an Ironman distance swim, there's no problem doing it on day 6 or 7 outside the race time. So like schedule, long day needs to be inserted, and make sure you put that in initially. Third thing is maintain intensity. And so when I talk about intensity, we don't want to deviate from what you've been doing. In other words, that last 3 weeks, a lot of athletes are overzealous about trying to go too fast. Gee, I want to feel great for my race, so therefore I'm going to start doing harder, faster repeats. And this is a really big problem. I see it happen in lots of different sports, not just triathlon, where athletes are trying to over sprint. And their muscles are not used to this. They haven't adapted to it. They do it 2 or 3 times before the race, and they feel great. And then all of a sudden on race day, their legs are a little bit tired. It could be just from 2 or 3 of those like hard or too hard sessions. Maintain the intensity that you've been doing on those same days. Number 4 is you want to make sure that you're still doing your mobility for your joints, and I'll say the big ones that you should be working on if you're not doing it, start now, is you really want to work on your rotator cuff, your hip and low back, and also your mid-back, your thoracic spine. So those are kind of the big 3. Your hip flexors generally get really, really tight. A lot of people lose their mobility, and their upper arms or pecs are really tight. So make sure that you're doing your mobility exercises. And if you're stretching as well, continue doing that during your taper. Don't stop. Strength training is really a key, and even when I had the opportunity to coach Chrissy Wellington and Craig Alexander, we did strength training all the way to the last week, even Tuesday or Wednesday of race week, reducing the load a little bit, but going through the range of motion, because quite often you get a dynamic stretch doing the strength stuff. So don't stop that as you get 2 to 3 weeks outside the race. Number 5, maintain your body weight. A lot of times during the taper we can go up because we're nervous about it, and if you go up 2%, not a good idea. I have a 1% window. You can drop 1% or you can go up 1%, so keep it right there. If you're reducing your volume, which you should, maintain intensity. Don't overeat just because you're nervous. Hold that weight constant, and try not to lose a lot of weight if you're not there at that ideal race weight, particularly at 22 days and down. As you get closer to the race, and now we're inside 10 days to the race, make sure you're doing all the things I just mentioned. Don't change a thing. The only thing that you do want to change is to reduce the total volume. And if you're working out between about 11 to 15 hours a week, you want to try to cut that volume down anywhere between 15 to 25%. If you're going over 15 hours, you can reduce that volume somewhere between 25 to 35% of your totals going into that. And this is really key. I think a lot of athletes always think, gee, I want to do just one last longer run as day 6 before the race. I think this is a real bad idea. You're not going to gain aerobic plumbing. Your capillary density is not going to go up. Your mitochondria function is not going to go up. You're just going to hamper yourself by doing some longer day. So reduce that volume, keep the intensity up. And lastly, if there's a 6 to this equation, people always ask me, what do you think about drinking alcohol? Do it in moderation if you're doing it. Alcohol has a dehydrative effect, but if you're normally having a glass of wine or a beer, that's fine. 3 days outside of the race, I would say really watch your intake of alcohol. Make sure that you're also increasing your sleep as best you can. And then lastly, your last 2 meals. So let's say the race is on Saturday. So Thursday night and Friday night, start shifting the evening dinner meal so that you finish around 6 o'clock at night. And the reason is you want a transit time that allows at least 10 hours. So on race day, a lot of you are going to be getting up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning. If I finish at 6 o'clock, then I've got 10 hours. And you really want to set that up a couple days before. So that's kind of it. I'll maybe add one more thing. Make sure you warm up before the race. I go to a lot of races and watch, and I see a lot of athletes that are just sort of standing there like this, and they're not moving. Swing your arms around, do some dynamic stretching, get your blood going, get your temperature up, and stay real warm before the start of the race. I always look at the swimmers, just pure swimmers. When they come up to the starting blocks, a lot of them have like the Arctic coats on. They got these big furry gloves on, hands are warm, feet are warm. Be overly warm. You can always peel that off, but don't go into the race cold. That's a lot of stuff. Review this. It may help you for your taper. And take a look at the Hoob website. Cheers.